Cool, we're gonna continue with advertising. If you thought the first section was a lot to cover, talking really fast, this one's even more. So I'm just going to try and cover everything in 1 hour. I'm trying to set it up so that it's obviously relevant for everyone and try to make it as practical as possible as always. But of course, ask me questions. And if I don't have time to answer them during, when I'm talking, then please come up afterwards. All right, advertising. Why are we talking about digital advertising? Of course, digital advertising is growing. We're all aware of that. But it's also some things to be aware of that. The fact that digital is growing is actually a good thing for us. With all of this, the reason why we're going through digital advertising and also why it's actually really relevant for us is that previously when we used to advertise, when you do it on a banner or in a magazine, you don't really get any feedback on who sees it, how is it doing. You just pay and then you get a certain amount of impressions. But what's getting more and more important is actually reaching those people that it really, really makes sense to reach. And we're going to go through that today. Now, we all know that digital advertising is growing. With that, mobile advertising is growing. So everything that I'm going through, as previously as I said, be aware that when you're creating advertising, it will be available on mobile and, of course, other iPads or whatever. So the formats and the things, especially when you're paying, you need to double check that everything is working. Now, when I decided what to do, because I only have 1 hour, which platforms to go through, it became natural that I have to do, so Facebook and Instagram is kind of one ad platform, and Google, because they by far have the biggest percentage. They're up to I think it's 84% of expected to have 84% of the digital advertising market this year. And even though there are other players in other markets, that's always good to be aware of. We live in a global world. I'm going through what's most important for most artists in Sweden. Okay, let's get right into it. So the way that I'm going to go through it is I'm going to go through Google first and Facebook later, and then we're going to go into targeting. Now, the main difference between Facebook and Google is that Google AdWords lets you decide the type of ad or the format of the ad first, and then you go in and choose your objectives. The Facebook one lets you decide your objectives first, and then you go in and choose your format. This will all make more sense when I actually go into detail, but that's just a difference between them. Okay, so let's start with Google. Google AdWords, when I'm talking about that specifically, I will go into YouTube because that's the one that's kind of the most important ones. But just so that you're aware, search network is, of course, when you're searching on Google, less so for artists and music, but if you do have a big event or if your artist is nominated for an award, it could be a good idea to do search ads at the time because people will be searching for that artist and make sure that their content is popping up. Display network, I'm not going to go through that either because of the time restraint, but that has to do with banners, and you can target these banners to partners that Google have, so it could be specific websites. This is often, so when I'm talking about banners, that's often connected to a bigger budget because it's so based on awareness, impressions. It's just like getting out the banners, everyone's aware of it, whereas it's less like, please buy no one buys it right away. That's less so apparent with banners. So it's part of a bigger campaign often. It can work quite well when it comes to niche. So if you're targeting more niche genres, so like metal and rock stuff, they tend to work better with that. I'm going to focus on the video one because that has to do with YouTube. So once you choose video, you get to choose your goal, as I said. So product and brand consideration or brand awareness and reach. Now, these things don't actually, when it comes to, I'm going to talk about pre-roll ads, so in-stream ads, which is like the thing that you see before a video starts playing, the skippable ads. And both of those are available in this. So this doesn't necessarily decide too much. It's like their way of just making it easier. when you're choosing like the type of ad that you're creating. So if you choose product and brand consideration, you will also have one other option that you won't have with the brand awareness. This will also make sense because I'm going to go through it now. Okay, so in search results is one type of ad that you can place on YouTube, similar to search on Google, of course. This has to do, so this often goes to a video on the platform. I don't use it too much, and it's often part of also if together with in-stream ads that you're doing. But of course, if you want to push it to a specific music video, it might be relatable. This one was the one that I mentioned. So this is before videos, 15 to 30 seconds. I'm not going through the non-skippable ones. So these are skippable ads. And you only pay if a person has actually watched 30 seconds if the ad is longer or the whole ad. Now, there are also new versions of this, because I mentioned, of course, mobile is getting more important. And with mobile and also generally just our attention spans are like less than a goldfish, I just heard. Like, what? That's insane. So part of this, Google actually launched something they called bumper ads, which is like 6-second videos on mobile. I'm sure you've all seen them. I'm just going to show you an example of that. And then it's over. So when you say 6 seconds, you think that you're not going to be able to create anything like creatively, or that people are not going to, understand what you're advertising. But it is actually a really good way. I'm sure you all perceived what that was about, and you don't need many more seconds to do that. And it actually forces you to be very concise. You can also just use I've seen examples. I wouldn't recommend it, but I've seen examples of just having like a photo as well for 6 seconds with just information on it. For these ones, you're paying per impression, so it's all about getting as much impression as possible, and they're often also part of a bigger. They work well with in-stream ads, the ones that I showed you before, but you can also have them separately. This is what I was talking about when you're thinking about product and brand consideration. So you can choose to place ads in a video. This is less important for music, but I just want you to be aware of it. So if you have a lot of merchandise and loads of YouTubers have picked up on your awesome t-shirt and they're wearing it in their videos, you can put ads in that video, and it looks like cards, so it looks native. You can add these on your own videos for free, for example. So it kind of looks, and then it pops up as like a little information button when they're talking about it, and you can then guide people to the store whenever you want to. Less so important, as I said, for music, but just for you guys to be aware of. Okay, so now that we're creating the ad, I want to put in the link with the video ad. I'm sure you've all seen the little link. Okay, it's really, really annoying. I don't know, how many people have placed the Google ad? A YouTube in-stream ad? Okay, not too many. Okay, so for anyone that's tried this, if you're using like a link, like a smart URL or a link fire link, just a link shortener, or the one that tracks data on people that click on it, you are not always able to put that in when they're asking you to put it in the link, because they review it, and it doesn't, if it's not included in their pre-approved sites, they might. I have like 50-50, so 50% work, 50% get rejected. So what you have to do to be able to be sure that it's going to work is to put in an iTunes link, an Apple Music link. I know it's really silly, especially in the Nordics. But you just put in like an iTunes link just for it to get approved. And of course, when you're putting in the iTunes link, make sure that it's that you're taking away the country code so that it works worldwide. But that doesn't mean that every time you're creating an in-stream ad that you can only create in-stream ads with iTunes link. The only thing is that they've just hidden the little feature. So you can go in afterwards and put in the correct link that you want people to go to afterwards. So that might be a link that has all of the different sites. So You have Spotify and iTunes and everything in one link, and people can choose themselves, which is always the one that I like to prefer to have. So this is what it looks like. You have to go into the video, and you have to put in the call to action. You can add a little cover as well alongside it, so a little image, and then it will pop up on the video as it's playing. There are also additional bits that you can add. So frequency capping, which is a very interesting one. You can cap how many people see it or view it, because of course a view is counted differently than an impression. So you can cap it to, for example, this will make more sense when we get into targeting. But for example, if you're having one ad that goes out to your fans, and then one ad that goes out to your non-fans, you might want to push this ad to your non-fans because they take a little bit longer, like they don't know what it is. Maybe you want to push that 3 times a day. But your fans, they're already aware. So once you show it to them, you're like, if they want to have it, they're going to click on it or they're not going to click on it. I only want to show it once a day. So you can choose to have that as well. And this is all in the additional settings. Okay, that was a very quick overview of Google. We're going to go into targeting when I get to that later, and that involves Google as well. Let's go into Facebook ads. Okay, you start with the objective. There are like tons of objectives. They add objectives like it changes on the daily, so you never know what you might find. I'm going to go through the ones that are kind of most relevant for music. So the way that it works is when you're choosing your objective, so if you choose, for example, a traffic objective, Facebook will recommend, so that means you want people to click on a link or drive something to a website, for example. That's what the traffic one stands for. It's a very common one within music because you want to drive them to a specific site. Now, what they will recommend for you is then, what you'll see in your analytics is the amount of people that have clicked on the ad. So that's what's important. But if you choose, for example, video, which is another popular one, they will push it to people that tend to watch videos a lot. And the important analytic there will be, okay, how long have you watched the video and how many people, what am I paying for the cost per video view? So that does depend on, that's how you kind of decide it. You can go into detail for this, as we'll get into that later, but that's kind of the basis of it. The most common ones are, as I said, video views, traffic, engagement if you want as much engagement. The difference between traffic and engagement is engagement will count as anything, so comments, shares, likes, whereas traffic only leads to a specific website. That's what they're focusing on. Brand awareness is sort of a new one, so they will push it out. Somehow Facebook knows who of your audience that you're pushing it out to will remember your ad after 2 days. So if it's part of a bigger campaign, I don't know how they do this, but if it's part of a bigger campaign, you might want to push, if it's like a new artist, you might want to push it. You start with brand awareness, for example. It's slightly more expensive to reach sometimes, but if that's what you're going for, then that's one of the ways that you can kind of choose to do it. And they will remember, and then you push like another ad. So it kind of continues. Sorry, so you advertise. Maybe I should just say it. Yes, so part of a bigger campaign, yeah. So if, the first section is pre-order, it's not as relevant as Nordic, but let's say the first one is pre-order or buy my single, the second one is buy my album, or my music video is out. So there are different types of ads as part of one larger marketing campaign. Yeah. The reach one is just getting as much reach as possible. Lead generation is mailing list, but within Facebook, so I'm not going to go into that too much, but it's an option that you have. Messages is for more for chatbots, but you can advertise messages as well. Conversions is an important one, actually, that I'm not going to talk about too much, but it is a good one. Conversions can actually track, if you have access to your website, if you're, for example, an artist that sell your merchandise or your music on your own website, you can put in, so you can track who's bought it. So that's what you will only pay when someone's actually bought your product. So that's how detailed you can get. This is what it looks like, the setup on Facebook. So you have the campaign, we've gone through the objective, and then you get to choose the targeting and the budget and where you see it. That bit I'm going to save for later, and I'm just going to go into the format first because that's the easier version. You're kind of more familiar with it. And then we're going to talk about targeting afterwards. So regardless of which objective you choose, you have different formats. They kind of differ slightly in between, but as an overall, these are kind of the formats that you have. So you won't actually be able to see from a fan perspective, the ad will look the same. It can be a video ad, but with a traffic objective to drive traffic. Does that make sense? Yes? Sort of? We'll see. We'll get into it. So there are two ones that are actually quite interesting. We're going to have a look at carousel and collection one later on, but those collection one is actually a new one. You can, of course, create slideshows just like with organic posts as well. Okay, this is what I was talking about. So what objective does this ad have? It's a video ad with a click, and there is no way you know if that is a conversion ad, if that's a brand awareness ad, if that's a reach ad. The objective has to do with who you're targeting, so who they're optimizing on the targeting. The format you can decide. So you can have a video ad for a traffic objective, as I mentioned before. This is one example of the video format. Actually, one thing, I have included Instagram there because when I'm talking about Facebook, the easiest way of creating Instagram ads is via the Facebook platform. So everything that I'm talking about actually adds to Instagram as well. So it's all kind of relevant. The one thing to be aware of when you're writing the kind of description, if you say click on the link below, because in your newsfeed the link is below, if you're pushing that out to Instagram as well within the same campaign, it will be click on the link below on Instagram, but the link isn't below. So please be aware of where you're actually putting the ads, because that does matter what you're writing. I have mentioned this before in my last section, so 360 videos and vertical videos. Of course, those are available for ads as well. So when you're thinking about video formats, especially if you're paying, it might be worth looking at what actually makes the most sense for Facebook and Instagram. I mentioned this carousel format. So this is what's called a carousel format. It's several images. What I tend to use it the most for actually is just simple ways of, not as important actually in Sweden, but it's good to be aware of that, sorry, I turned it off. It's good to be aware of that if you have your music available on Spotify and Apple and Amazon, and you want to highlight those separately, you can do that with a carousel ad. So you can have separate links that goes to, so you can highlight it with an Apple logo or with the Spotify logo, all in the same ad. So you don't have to create thousands of different ads. One way to be creative with it is, of course, to do this type of version. You can create these with videos as well. Is that working? Yeah, cool. So collection ads, I talked about this earlier before, slightly more relevant for a lot of products, so you can put in like products. Now with this is actually quite interesting because what you create with this is, it leads to, when people click on it, it leads to something called a canvas ad. A canvas ad I didn't bring up in the last section, but it's something that you can create completely organic. And those are the nice, those nice links that look really good on mobile? They're only available on mobile. And I'm going to show you an example of that. I've tried to film myself going through this. Let's see what it looks like. Kind of get the idea. This is that was like it's a super simple way of doing it. Basically, I've just stacked videos after each other, but it looks very seamless on mobile, so it's like specified for a mobile. You need to go into your publishing section on your Facebook page, and then go into Canvas on the left-hand side at the bottom, and you can create these type of things. And when you add in little buttons, it will kind of look very good as well. That will also be like seamless on it. This was just like a preview of the album for Pale Honey that we created. The actual interesting one, because this is just to show that anyone can do it, but the interesting bits is if you can have the video slightly formatted for that type as well. So it kind of feels almost a bit like 360. So I've created videos where if you actually turn around on mobile, it looks much better on mobile. Like if you're turning around, it will kind of, the video will slightly like tilt with you. I'm sure you've kind of experienced it if you've seen it on Facebook, and those are really cool. I mentioned this before just to make sure that you know what it looks like. Lead generation, you can have signups directly on Facebook, and Facebook will track all the data so it doesn't get lost. Super easy way for people to sign up to different types. Often when it comes to music, we want to push them to our own mailing list, but this can be combined with that. Messages, mentioned that as well, so just to show you, you can click send message. I did mention, chatbots and things, but if you're doing it as an ad, you can actually set it up via Facebook automatically. So if it's just like super simple, you can say like, send us a message to receive a link to our last live performance, for example. And so when you send the message, you can put in, within your settings, you can put in, okay, when someone sends me a message, this will automatically be the answer that they get. And so it will be like only that. Of course, this means that if you're getting other messages in your little inbox section, then they will always get a link as an answer, just so that you're aware. So this was just to something that I didn't mention, but there is a ad objective that's for catalog sale. This is slightly more relevant for products, but basically what Facebook can do is that you can upload your whole product to Facebook, and if you have pixels installed, don't worry if you don't know what that means, but basically if I go into IKEA and I'm looking at a bed, but I don't actually buy it, you can then automatically have these ads created. You don't even have to create them yourself. It knows that through the tracking on the website, that when I go onto Facebook, it will say, oh, do you want to buy this bed? Because I've looked at it, for example. You can put in all different types of rules, but basically these are self-made ads, but you have to upload your whole product catalog onto Facebook. Less so important for music, but it's just good for you guys to be aware of. When you decide your objective for traffic conversions and store visits, you can, when you've chosen your objective, you can then put in, oh, I want to create an offer. This is just a different way of pushing a sale, or, we have until there's like 25% on this album, or get it before Christmas, or something like that. That's just like the format, so it just changes the format slightly. And they can redeem it, so if you have a come to this gig to redeem your code, you can have that, or you can have that they can redeem it online. So you can decide. I've been talking about all these different formats. Of course, Instagram Stories is another one, so you can advertise through Instagram Stories. Everyone reacted really like, just the way when Instagram started having ads, everyone's like, whoa, we hate it. And then they kind of calmed down a bit. And it's the same thing with Instagram Stories. The one thing that I would mention is, of course, Instagram Stories it's more casual. So you have to remember where you're actually placing your ads. You can't have an ad that's like super serious if it's in a place where it's kind of casual. So I would say these are more for like type of fun ads, if you can like have little bits of some kind of creative idea that you can create an ad of, or if you have limited, so only for this day, for example, because stories only last for a day, so that kind of makes sense within the realm of stories. Does that all make sense? Cool. Let's go into some guidelines. When you're creating an ad, don't put too much text in it, because Facebook does not like that. They used to cut off, so they don't allow you to do that. But now they've changed it so that it's a general guideline. What that means is if you get, so if you put too much text in it, in image or video, they will tell you, hey, this looks like it has too much text in it. So you can still run the ad. Of course, sometimes, occasionally, you have to run, like if it's a lyric video and Facebook sometimes detects it wrong, supposedly they're supposed to know if it's like a tour poster or whatever, and not say that. But if it does, then okay, fine, you have to run it, but be prepared to pay more for it because your ad will be more expensive. So as a rule, try to be wary. Facebook have launched this creative hub where you can create ads and you can see what they look like and you can share it with people. And within that, they also have a text check. So you can check if it gets approved or not in advance if you want it to. Okay, so I've talked about the formats. Now let's go into placements. So usually when you create, so you've chosen I want a website ad, you go in and automatically it says all placements. So it says that you're going to show this ad everywhere that Facebook shows it. So where are these places? I'm just going to go through that. So these also differ slightly depending on which objective, but I'm just going to go through them so that you're aware of all of them. Of course, Messenger is one of them. Sponsor messages is for like chatbots, but the home page when you go onto your Messenger, you can place an ad there. You can place an ad in something called Audience Network, which is partners. So just like Google and YouTube has partners that they work with to place ads on their pages and websites, or Facebook has that as well. So it could be apps like, oh, I'm playing Candy Crush and an ad comes up. It could be a video or a banner or whatever. In-stream videos or native banner, for example. Instagram, we've talked about. And then we have Facebook. So we have the Facebook feed, pretty normal in-stream video for longer videos. Obviously, with you're all experts at knowing that they're pushing that now. And suggested videos is like a video underneath the video, if you've watched one. The one thing that I'm not going to forget, right column. So it's a super shitty placement. I think they're going to take it away. Who checks the right column on desktop? You know that little ad? Have you ever clicked on that ad? I don't think so. If you want to be like, oh, I just want as many people as possible to be aware of my ad, fine, you can have that in. But if you're pushing to get website traffic, no one is going to click on that ad. So what that means when you're checking the placements is that you can go in and edit these placements and take away that right column. Be aware that your ad will actually most often cost more when you take away those, depending, because they want to just push it out when you're paying for impressions, they can push it out to as many people as possible. So it might be slightly more expensive if you take away the right column or the audience network, for example. I usually do that for every single website traffic ad that I have. For video ads, you can kind of be a little bit, if you just want people to be aware of it. But what that means is that at least the people that are seeing it are relevant. I rather pay more for the relevant people to see it than just randoms and no one does anything, just wasting money. So just be aware of that. We're going to talk about targeting now, because I've mentioned this throughout and everyone's like, what the hell is she talking about? Targeting different people. So there are a bunch of different targeting. This is where it can get really, really intricate with this. I'm just going to go through the basic targeting that's available now, and then we're going into the more detailed ones later. So keywords, this is just a comparison. So keywords, of course, they are available for Google and not Facebook. Interest is kind of broader interest. If you're trying to target, so this would be like similar bands that you're trying to target. If you're trying to target similar bands, especially if they're Nordic bands, even if they're huge, they might not be big in the realm of Facebook, and so they will not appear in your interest. Just so that you know, if that doesn't happen, it's because it's a Nordic band and it doesn't appear. So you usually have to think much, much broader in terms of interest when you're using that, which of course makes it also less kind of targeted. You might not target the right people that might be interested. I put affinity versus topics. Those are two options that you have on Google. So affinity has to do with the fact that you can, so it looks on like people's long-term interests. So I'm a music lover, for example. But then you have topics, and that has to do with the placements. So you can place an ad towards topics on, for example, for people that, for videos that has to do with cars. Does that make sense? So you can target interests, but they're like different. So one is like people, and one is placements and subjects, if that makes sense. Behavior, more kind of broader behaviors, like people that tend to buy a lot of electronics, for example. Likes and connection has to do with pages. This is a really good one. If you have access, if you manage several pages, there was someone that had a question about that earlier. This is great, especially if they have overlapping audiences. So you have a new band that you want to introduce, and you have access to this other page. This is an easier way of, you can actually target that page, and it's way cheaper than using the interests usually. So that's a tip. And you can also target friends of the people that like that page if you wanted to. Age and gender is, pretty self-explanatory. The reason why I have a tick and an X on Google is because if you're not logged in, or they don't know, you haven't given like your, you're automatically logged in on YouTube or your email or whatever, they will guess depending on your search browser. So like this is like really lame, but if I tend to look for a lot of makeup, they will automatically think that I am a woman. Of course, you don't have to be that. Geography, languages, pretty self-explanatory. Mobile OS and Wi-Fi is an interesting one because you need to be aware of that if you're targeting, especially if you're targeting like countries outside of the Nordics. Certain people, for example, in the UK, a lot of people don't have a lot of data, so they don't watch like videos if they're outside and going about their day. They might turn it off, and you might want to push it if you know that this specific audience behaves like that. You might want to turn your ads on only for people that have access to Wi-Fi, because you know that that's when they will be able to see that video and that ad. So it's just something to be aware of, depending on which places you're targeting. Okay, so how do you start with the targeting? Of course, you can start with Spotify and YouTube and your own brain of what you want to start targeting. Chartmetric has a free tier as well that you can use. But there are good insights on these platforms. This is available via the Business Manager, so audience insights. You have the normal kind of insights that you have on your normal page as well. If you don't know what Business Manager is, and you have several pages that you're managing and you're several people managing ads, it's a good idea to check into what that is. So you can talk to me about that later if that makes no sense to you. But this is available. And you can go into Audience Insights, put in your page, and what it will show other types of interests that that they might have, your audience might have, and other types of pages that they might like. And so this is super good. In terms of the interest, if you're thinking about targeting TV or radio or whatever, or broadening your marketing plan in terms of who to, kind of what to do, those interests will kind of serve you real good information. And in terms of interest targeting, you'll get that in the page likes. So I did the test on Amy Mann the other day, and for some reason she has people that like her page. Well, it makes sense, but people that like her page tend to also like Barack Obama, which is something that you wouldn't think of. It kind of makes sense when you see it, but you wouldn't consider, because they have nothing correlating in that sense. So you might get surprising information there. Google AdWords has something called Keyword Planner. You can type in a keyword and it will give you ideas on how many searches that word has, how many monthly searches, so you'll see if it's like highly searched or lowly searched. Actually, now that you're creating ads, they've also changed, so you don't even have to go into the Keyword Planner. It will give you that option as you're creating your ad, which is great. The display planner is also a different one, so obviously you use that for more for banners, but you can go in and see, if you type in a specific type of keyword or word, and you can see which placements to have or which videos on YouTube that are specifically relevant for that subject. Okay, let's go into advanced advertising. Does anyone know what retargeting is? A few people. Can someone explain this to me? Someone that wants to explain what retargeting is? Oh, wow. Silence. Good one.
The ad is shown to the same user on different services multiple times.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for that. So this is what I've mentioned. So what you go into a website, you see something, and then you go into Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, and they will know that you've seen that. That is called retargeting. And actually, it's so freaky nowadays that they are listening to you guys. So I was talking about, I took a trip to Iceland not too long ago, and I was talking about different, I hadn't even started searching for things on my laptop, but I was talking about Iceland. Go into Facebook, and of course, they want to sell me Iceland tickets. How do they know that? It's because your microphone is on. Interesting thing. It's creepy as people, but awesome for advertising. Yay, okay? So that's kind of the way that it works. So you go into your website, and then you see that ad on Facebook. Shout out to Claire for explaining this, my old colleague, explaining this the best way possible through a cookie. So how do they know what you're seeing? It's a little code that's on the website, and then Facebook or Google, they collect that little code, and it will gather it in a list, and you can then use it for your advertising. That doesn't mean that I have every single person's name and email address, and it's just a list that's in a data. So I don't know who they are, but I can retarget them. They'll know that through that code. Now, you can use this for websites as the example, but you can also use it for several things. So you can place these little pixels on several sites. So Vivo and YouTube is one, Facebook Messenger and Instagram. All of these we're going to go into detail now. Of course, links and emails as well. So when I was talking about smart URL links or link fire links, we can track people that click on the link. We can track where they're going. You can go into detail depending on the service that you're using. Okay, let's go into AdWords. So the retargeting options that you have there is website visitors. We've talked about that. App users, not so much interesting here. Customer list is a mailing list. So if you have a mailing list, you can use that as well. YouTube users is, of course, a very interesting one. So you can create lists from people that have watched all of your videos or that have subscribed. This means that you can target differently. So you can target different type of ads to people that are subscribers, and different type of ads to people that have watched only one of your videos, because those audiences are different, and it does matter what type of advertising you're doing. With that said, you can also, with these type of audiences, you can also choose to exclude them. So if you have a mailing list, for example, let's go into the Facebook version, for example. Customer file is the same thing as the one on Google. If you have a mailing list and I upload that, if I know that I've sent out a mailing list and I'm like, everyone's bought, I can see that, loads of people have bought it. You don't have to. You can actually take away those people that have bought your product from the mailing list. Or you can choose to exclude the whole mailing list if you want to, and only push to people, so you're not targeting anyone that's very, very interested in your product or you're banned from the start. Because if they're subscribed to your mailing list, they're probably aware of who you are and probably interested and will be aware of it. So that's one way that you can do it. These are all this is getting really intricate now on Facebook. So, of course, website traffic is the other option. The ones that are interesting here is the engagement one. So when you go into engagement, this will all make sense now why I've talked about video and messenger and everything, because you can track and create audiences from all of these people. And so video, you can create different type of audiences for people that have watched 25% of your videos. You can create audience for people that have watched all of your video. You can create different types of ads towards those targeting groups. The Facebook page one, you can target people, everyone, so your whole page, but you can also target post engagers, post and ad engagers. So it goes really into detail when it comes to that. Instagram business profile, I briefly took that up before. So this is why I would turn your profile into a business profile. The only thing that gets added is like an email or a phone number. You can kind of customize that afterwards, and you get analytics. But when I've been talking about Instagram ads, of course, everything goes through Facebook. So when you're targeting ads on Instagram, you've been targeting the people that they can recognize via Facebook. As I said before, I mentioned slightly that, you know, if, like, my sister is very young, and she doesn't use Facebook. She only uses Instagram. And so I won't be able to reach her because she's not part of my targeting group that's on Facebook. But if you turn your profile into a business profile and connect that to Facebook, you can now target her. And that will be specifically for Instagram. So it's a very interesting one. Events, of course, so if you're trying to sell tickets and people have said that they're coming, you can exclude the people that have said that they're coming, for example. That's just an example of that. Okay, so that was the type of audiences that you have direct access to and that have engaged with you somehow. From these audiences, then, you can create something called lookalike audiences. And this is when it gets really interesting. So when I was talking previously about broader interests and like really broad topics, so you can actually go into Facebook and see what type of interest they targeted like your personal profile on. I went in and there was like something about like grass, like that I'm interested in grass. I don't know how they like figured out that I'm interested in grass. I'm not, like I don't know what I've done. But basically there's tons of different type of keywords that pop in that have nothing to do with you, which means that when you're targeting a really large interest group, you might not reach the relevant people because it's a very big group. This one makes it slightly easier to reach people, new people that you haven't interacted with your page, but that might be more interested in than those other people. So the source here can be your mailing list, all of the different types that we created. So your people that have watched your videos or that have interacted with your page. And what it will do is that it will find an audience size. So of course you can choose between 1 to 10%, and it will find people that haven't liked your page yet or haven't interacted with it, but that are likely to do so. So this is actually one of the most common targeting groups that I use to find like new audiences, and they tend to be a lot cheaper as well. Just so that you're aware of that. Google has a similar function, so they create similar audiences automatically. It's slightly different because you can't set it up in advance, or you can kind of trick it to set it up in advance, but they will create any targeting group. So if you create a group of people that have watched your videos on YouTube, if you run the ad, they will then create a similar audience out of that automatically. Okay, so I've mentioned a Facebook pixel. I just want to make sure that I'm clear here that in order for you to be able to use remarketing, you need to place a code and connect. Facebook doesn't automatically know this. Of course, the video and everything that happens on their platform they know, but everything that happens outside, they don't know that. You need to connect it. So you need to connect, put in a pixel and say what that means if you're putting it on your website. Okay, so I've talked loads about targeting groups. We're going to talk about A/B testing. If you don't know what that is, it's basically just testing so that you get the most out of your ads. If you don't A/B test, your ads will probably never improve, and it will just be kind of well, it's there, I pay that much. But you want to keep improving your ads. You can only compare it to yourself. And I always try to compare and get better results that I've gotten and find little quirks that work. Now, with this said, is that so when you're doing, so the way that you target is that you can choose to target one group, and I just chuck in everything in there. So I chuck in like similar interest, lookalike audiences, everything. What happens is that when you get the results for your campaign, if you have everything in one targeting group, you won't be able to compare them. You're like, what worked the best? What didn't work? You have to split them up in order to see what works the best. So Facebook there are different types of platforms that you can use outside, but Facebook have actually made it easier for us to A/B test now. So they have something called a dynamic creative. This is supported by, so the objectives that they work for is traffic, app, and conversions. So when you choose those objectives, you can then click on dynamic creative. And what is that? Okay, when you create your ad, you can upload different types of images. And then you can create different types of what we call call to action, so like the learn more, listen now. And you can create different titles. And Facebook will automatically, you don't have to think about it. Once you've uploaded this, make sure that they all fit together so that you're not thinking that this only goes with that. They have to all fit together. Because what Facebook does is that they take these little bits and they test all of the different variables that are available. And they do that automatically. And they will push out the one that goes the best. So they might take that call to action with that headline and that image, and they will test the different types. So this is a really easy way of getting that tested when it comes to the creative. They've also launched something called split testing, which is, so the creative version, the difference there between the dynamic and the split testing is that when it comes to creative, you can create two different types of ads, but they won't combine the different options with each other. So it's like this ad compared to that ad. But it gets really interesting when you can do it for delivery optimization, which we're going to talk about, and audiences. So this is where I said, you can test your different audiences against each other and see which one goes the best. And they also have one with placement. So, for example, when I was talking about the fact that I had been, I take away the desktop right column placement, you can test that. See, does it work better if I take that away? Or does it work better if I have all of them? So you can test different types. They also have launched something called dynamic language ads. One thing with ads, actually, to remember, when it comes to if you're doing international advertising, don't chuck countries. So countries that tend to be cheaper, don't mix them with countries that tend to be more expensive. This is a little bit more advanced, but when you start testing, you'll see the difference. So if I'm creating ads towards Mexico, and I'm creating them in the same target group as the UK, what Facebook will do is that they will push, because Mexico is cheaper, they'll push all of the ad budget towards that. So if you want to make sure that you're actually splitting these, you need to split them in different types of campaigns. With that said, of course, with the different types of campaigns, you might want to use Spanish language ads for Mexico. Or if you're, so for example, if you're targeting the UK and Germany, they have quite similar, so it's not that one country is a lot cheaper than the other one. And you want to create different types of ads for this. You don't have to create several ads with different languages. You can now just put in the language that you have when you're creating your ad, and it will know who has it set to Germany and who has it set to UK. So they'll have German-speaking ads to the Germany and English to the UK, for example. Okay, let's have a
Listen, we need to have a talk about Vanderhoff.
The fact is, he's the sponsor. And you signed a contract guaranteeing him certain concessions, one of them being a spot on the show.
Well, that's where I see things just a little differently. Contract or no, I will not bow to any sponsor.
Sorry you feel that way, but basically it's the nature of the beast.
Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but for me, the beast doesn't include selling out.
Garth, you know what I'm talking about, right?
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
I can't talk about it anymore. It's giving me a headache.
All right. So I'll just stop it at that clip. That was, besides being a great clip from Wayne's World, that has to do with the fact I've talked about it several times, but just make sure that you're aware of which environment you're creating your ads on, even if it's like different placements. So if you're creating ads for YouTube, you can have them run for a longer time because people tend to be okay with the fact that you're running them for a longer time. And also like that there's longer form videos, for example. With Facebook, the content changes every day. So just be wary of the fact that you're like, I've had people that ask me to occasionally, like that might make sense for someone with like really, but I would generally just stay away from it. But people ask me like to have an ad for 2 weeks. Like I would say a maximum of like 5 days, maximum 7, but that is a lot. So bear in mind, if the content changes every day, you might want to just keep your budget within like 3 days, because that's how people are interacting with the platform. One thing that's really annoying, this is just like an intricate little detail, is when you're duplicating ads. So if you're having ads and you're creating several ads, when you're duplicating them, they will count as a separate ad. So a lot of people don't know that. So they'll have their own ID. So if I'm creating 3 different target groups and I'm having ads with that, it will be 3 different ads. Now, what that means in reality is that when you're pushing it out, it means that if the target group in fans, for example, they have one ad, if 2 people are liking the page, it will go to that post. If 2 people from a different targeting group will like the post, it won't appear on that other post. So it kind of looks a bit weird. Like sometimes you see ads, if you're having smaller audiences, this is where it gets important. So it looks a bit weird. You want to gather all of the likes and all of the comments into one specific post. In order to do that, you need to go in and get the ID. You can do that from a little section called page post. You can get the ID and you need to go into the ad and paste the ID into every single targeting group. It's a little bit annoying, but just something to be wary that they will count as different ads in terms of the comments and the likes, because I just want it to look as good as possible in order for new people to kind of get interested. They're like, oh yeah, this has loads of likes, rather than just like 2. Okay, let's talk about budgeting. Is everything clear so far? Are you excited to go out and create some ads, guys? Okay, let's talk about budget. So there are different types of bidding that you can do. Actually, with Facebook, interesting enough, they've actually launched, so normally they have this one called auction. They have launched a different type of bidding, which is called reach and frequency. That is a TV, that's aimed at TV advertisers, so people that have a lot more money than us. And what it does is that it ensures, so if you put in this amount of budget, this is how many impressions you will get. So that's a different way of doing it. The way that I'm going to go through is like the normal way of like auctioning. So basically, when you create an ad, you're bidding to get your ad shown with other advertisers, of course. One thing to bear in mind, actually, is that if you are creating ads, like if your promoter is creating ads, so if you're having tour dates, for example, and then I'm creating ads as well, and we're targeting the same people, our ads will be more expensive because we're bidding against each other. So that's how auction works. So these are the bidding options for the different types of objectives. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize this. It will come up as a suggestion, but it's just good to be aware that you have these options. It will be set to a specific option automatically, but as you now know with A/B testing, you might want to test these versions out and see which one works out the cheapest. So for example, if you're doing a traffic ad, you can choose to bid per link click, which means that when people have clicked on the link, or per impression, which is per 1,000 impressions, which is when 1,000 people have seen it. So that's a little bit different types of bidding, and that will also affect the price. Now, with video views, it's important to know, I haven't put in Google here, but it will automatically bid for cost per view, which is the 10-second video views. For Google, as I said, that you will only pay when it's 30 seconds or the whole video. So these metrics that you're seeing, they might be different from platform to platform, so make sure that you know what they mean. So for video, they will charge you for a 10-second video view, if you choose to have that. With that said, so that will be when you get charged. That's the bit that I went through now. The other version that I've talked about now that has to do with the objective is that when you choose an objective, they will automatically recommend a optimization for your ad delivery, which means the people that tend to see it. So I'm going to take the example of a link click. So a link click, they'll deliver it to the people that tend to click on, so they'll be likely to click on your links because those are the people that might be relevant. Now, bear in mind, this might be something that you want to test out. This is the reason, because I might be a person that is like someone that has an OCD and has to click on everything or something, and that will be counted as someone that is likely to click on a link, but it might not necessarily be relevant. Most of the time when you're starting out, keep it to the recommended one, but I'm just giving you the option of if you want to test it out, there are other options out there. The daily unique reach one is quite an interesting one. So if you haven't chosen the reach objective, you can choose this version so that optimization delivery, if you have a very small audience. So sometimes when I target fans of new bands, they don't have a lot of retargeting data. They only have a few people on their page. And I don't want to push out an ad if I'm having it for, let's say, 3 days. If I'm having it for that amount of time and there's only 1,000 or 2,000 people, this is for very small audiences, that it goes out to, then they will be shown that ad like loads of times if I put in a specific budget, if I put it in a bigger budget. So I can put it on daily unique reach, which means that people will only see it once a day. And particularly for fans, if you have a smaller targeting audience, that might make sense to try out. That's just a tip of things that you can A/B test. So when it comes to analytics, then once you've bidded and everything's set up, there are tons of different things that you can have a look at. So you can, if you're targeting your video views, for example, you want to look at the cost per view. If you're doing a link click, you want to look at cost per link click. Bear in mind, this is a common mistake. So if you're choosing a video view, your link clicks will be more expensive because they're optimizing for the video view and not the link click, just so that you're aware of that. But the link click will still, in your analytics, it will still show up how much it costs. You can also have a look at the frequency, as I said before, so how many times an ad has been shown. And also the click-through rate, so how many times they clicked through it. And this could be also, they show one for all types of so all types of clicks, which is like and comment and everything. And then they show one for specific link clicks. They can also show one, they've put in a new metric, which is landing page, which is quite an interesting one. So that means that link clicks, a lot of people tend to click on a link, but then it doesn't load well. So they don't actually go to the page, they tend to take it off afterwards. A landing page will show you how many people have actually landed on the page, which is interesting. And then I'll come to the one that's more important, relevance score. So relevance score is something you have to add in your column, and you can have a look. It's a number between 1 and 10, and it will give you a good indication of how your ad is performing with your audience. So if people are clicking on hide post all the time, that's not a good sign. Your ad will get a low relevance score. So if it's like 3, you'll be like, I need to think about how to fix this. Am I targeting the wrong people? Is it the wrong creative? So keep an eye on relevance score. It's a really easy way of seeing how your ad is doing. And of course, just make sure that you're changing according to the analytics. So if you're seeing that something isn't working, don't be scared of just changing it up and changing it in the middle of a campaign, for example. Okay, before we finish, I said I was going to be a bit sneaky throughout the one, so I will put in just a little sneaky one for Snapchat. Snapchat have opened up their ads manager, and it should be available in Sweden as well. And so you can now create different types of ads on Snapchat as well, if that's relevant for you. I think that you should definitely have a look at that. Especially the filters are quite interesting, so it doesn't have to cost a lot at all. If you have an event and you want to create a filter for that specific event for one day, I think we created one, it was a while ago now, but it was like 15, now I'm saying it in dollars, but like $15, which is not a lot of money at all. So it's just worth having a look at. Also, I've been talking about vertical videos throughout this whole presentation. In the Snapchat Ads Manager, they make it really, really easy to create vertical videos. And you can create them and save them and use them on other platforms. So that's an easy way if you want to have like a little ad editing program. And that was a really, really quick overview of ads. I hope that you feel that you have enough information to take it with you and try out and test things and at least have a bit of a more understanding of what the different types of things that you can do, what they mean. Thank you so much.